I'm often confused about the concept of generosity. What does it mean to be generous? And how does one put it into practice? Because if you are anything like me, there's one thing I absolutely dislike with a passion is people that do generous acts and then they go post it on social media. Let's talk about it. How to be a generous Christian woman. The Bible calls us to be generous. What does that mean and what does that look like? Well, embracing generosity is it's a answering God's call because he is generous to us and he wants us to be generous like him. In a world that often emphasizes self interest, Proverb 31 offers a refreshing reminder of the beauty of generosity and compassion. As we explore this timeless chapter, we discover that opening our hands to the poor and cultivating a spirit of generosity are not just acts of charity, but expressions of a heart aligned with God's love. What are some of the misconceptions about generosity that the world believes and that stops them from being generous? Number one, generosity is only about money. This is a deeply flawed misconception. Many people believe that generosity is only about giving money or material possessions. While financial contributions are a form of generosity, it encompasses so much more than that. Generosity can include giving your time, offering emotional support, sharing knowledge, or simply being present, or taking a meal to someone, offering to babysit. Acts of kindness and service are a form of generosity and are such a vital expression of generosity because if you don't have anyone to listen to you, anyone to look after you, to give you a hug when you are having an emotional time, those are all underrated generous acts that are often ignored. And the second misconception that people often have is that generosity requires a lot of resources. That's something that to be truly generous, you must have substantial financial resources or large amount of time. And I disagree with that because generosity isn't limited by the size of one's resources. Even small acts of kindness or modest contributions can make a significant impact. The intention beyond the act, however, and the willingness to give, regardless of the amount, is what truly matters when it comes to generosity. And another misconception is that generosity is a one time act. People often view generosity as a single, isolated act. I gave you a hug, I listened to you the other day, and it is over. But it is not so. Or if during donations, around Christmas, you always get all these charity that want you to donate money, like a charity drive, helping at the shelter. But those things are not limited to that. It is so much more than that. In my opinion, true generosity is a lifestyle and a continuous attitude. It involves regularly seeking opportunities to support and uplift others, making it an ongoing practice rather than a one time event. Imagine if all of us just chose to be generous as a one time event. I did it then, I'm not doing it again. A generous person integrate this mindset into their daily life and interactions. So it's not a one time thing. It's something that you do daily with the help of the Holy Spirit, daily walking a life of generosity. The fourth misconception is generosity is a means to gain favor or recognition. This one drives me crazy. where someone is doing good so that they may seem and seen to be a good person, where they just want to earn favor from other people. It's like what I mentioned. You've seen those people that travel to African countries and they pick the dirtiest child they can possibly find, and they usually have a fly on their nose for some reason. And they decide to give them a piece of bread and make a big, you know, social media thing about it, and robbing the child and that community of the integrity and a sense of I don't know, significance. Because when you do that, you rob people of that, like, that sense of self-worth. I don't think it should be done. Personally, I think authentic generosity comes from a place of selflessness and genuine care for others, not from the desire for personal gain or acknowledgement. The best acts of generosity are often those done without expecting anything in return. If you want to know how generous you are, do something for someone that cannot do it back for you. Number 5, that generosity is easy and natural for everyone. This is far from the truth. Some people are simply not generous. I've seen the richest stingy people, and I've seen the poorest generous people. It's sometimes assumed that because someone has a lot of money, they are generous. It is not so at all. It is This is an innate quality that comes naturally to some and not to others. And that's okay. That means we all work in progress, because we can all, change. For me personally, I believe in generosity because other people's generosity have changed my life. If it was not for other people's kindness and generosity, I wouldn't be where I am today because of the things they decided out of the goodness of their heart to do for me. Generosity is often a learned behavior. It can be developed over time. Even if you're not a naturally generous person, it's something that you can learn if you're willing to 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 change and make the to change your behavior and your mindset in order to become a generous person. It requires intentional effort, practice, and a cultivation of empathy and compassion that, if it doesn't come naturally to you, it would feel so overwhelming. Um, for many, becoming more generous involves uh, overcoming personal challenges, shifting mindsets, shifting perspective, and beginning to see it as a way of serving others, because we are called to serve others as children of God. And generosity is just another way that you can serve your community, your family, your co-workers, and so on and so forth. The next misconception that is seen about generosity, there's a belief that generosity is something only for the wealthy individuals or those in position of influence. I absolutely disagree with this one. Everybody can be generous because we all have a little bit more than the person next to us. For example, the person in the car wishes they had a Range Rover. The person on the bus wishes they had a car. And the person taking the taxi as well also wishes they had a car. The person walking wishes that they could take a taxi, right? And they wish they could have a bicycle. So we all have more than other people. So we can all be generous. All of us can be. And generosity is accessible to everyone, regardless of their financial status or social status. Everyone can contribute in a meaningful way. An act of kindness and generosity can come from any person, regardless of their circumstance. We can all be generous. And the last misconception I want to touch on is that generosity means that you have to sacrifice your own needs. It does not mean that at all. You can still have what you want without sacrificing your own need. And you know what? Sometimes God does ask us to sacrifice our own need to meet the well-being of another person. God has done that for me in my life before, where He's asked me to do something, and I'm like, why are you asking me to do this? But because the other person needed it more and is using me as a vessel to provide for one of His children. While generosity involves giving and serving others, it doesn't mean one must sacrifice their health and their happiness and their businesses in order to be generous. True generosity, really true generosity, can be balanced with self-care and personal boundaries, and those are also important on your journey to being generous, because there are people that would want to take advantage of your generosity, and people, if you do not set boundaries about your generosity, people will take advantage of that. And I think often people are scared that they will be taken advantage of because of their generosity. So instead of learning a better way of doing it, they decide to simply stop being generous because they've been used and abused before, uh, and taken advantage of. And I think, yeah, boundaries are important. We can see in Proverbs 31, it paints a picture of a woman whose life truly embodies the virtues of strength, wisdom, and kindness. Among her many admirable qualities in this Proverbs 31 woman, her generosity towards those in need is what I would like for us to explore a little bit more. And I find it very admirable in her. And those are the qualities for me personally. I ask God to help me gain one of these qualities, and generosity is one of those qualities that I really want to gain. In Proverbs 31:20, it says, we read, it says, she opens her arms to the poor and extend her hands to the needy. How does she do that? This verse challenges us to consider how we can open our hands and our heart to those around us. It's not merely about giving out of your surplus, or about, oh, I have too much of this and then I can give it away. Oh, I have to. No, it's not about that. It's really about fostering a genuine compassion that sees the needs of others, not just our own. Whether this need, the ability to see the need of others, just not our own, whether it's through financial support, with time, with kind words, with resources, reaching out to those less fortunate is a reflection of God's love in action. I can't think of a better way to express God's love than through acts of kindness and of generosity. So, how do you become generous? Generosity begins for me, I think, with the awareness and intentionality. To truly reach out to those in need, we must first recognize their struggle and be willing to step into their world and be with them in their world with empathy and support, without criticism and without thinking that you are better than them. Proverbs 31:8 speaks about the importance of speaking up for those who cannot speak for themselves and ensuring justice for the oppressed. Speaking up for the widow, for the orphans, those are all things that the Bible requires us to do, speaking up for those who cannot speak for themselves and looking after those who are destituted, speaking up for them to be judged fairly, to be treated fairly, to defend their rights and their need of basic human rights. That's why the Word of God often says to look after the orphans. But in practical terms, this might mean for you personally to volunteer at a local shelter or participating in a community outreach, whatever. Offer to babysit new tired parent. You have no idea. For us, I remember when our kids were still very little, someone asking us to babysit our children was like an absolute blessing, because new parents, even parents in general, need a break. Grocery shopping for the elderly, or grocery shopping for a new mom, grocery shopping for a person who just had surgery. Buy a loaf of bread for a car guard. I have a soft spot for car guards because years and years ago, my dad was a car guard. And I know they can be in your face and can be quite annoying, but that's act of kindness. Just buying a loaf of bread and a can of cool drink for your car guard, that can be helpful. Especially, I don't ever carry cash in my wallet, but I find that very helpful. You can just give him a bag of bread and a drink to without the whole world seeing it, but still doing it by giving them their dignity. Generosity also comes like simply being compassionate with a friend or with someone who is struggling, right? Every act of kindness, no matter how small, contribute to a larger movement of support and justice. There are many ways to be generous if you're willing to think outside the box. Now, let's talk about how we can cultivate a spirit of generosity in your family and in your children. Instilling a spirit of generosity within your families is one of the most important and impactful ways that you can ensure to pass on to future generations. You can ensure that your children are decent human beings by becoming generous. You can teach this by modeling. Your children often watch us by incorporating acts of kindness and service into our daily routines, as I mentioned, like your car guard, your gardener. We create an environment where compassion becomes second nature. Here are a few practical ways to nurture generosity within your family. And that starts with how you also treat if you have a housekeeper, treat them with generosity and kindness. Your gardener, whoever, the lady at the till, your children are always watching you. Let's have a look at the few practical ways that we can encourage and build generosity in our family. Lead by example. Demonstrate generosity through your actions. When children see their parents being generous, giving to others and serving others and those in needs, they are more likely to adopt the same mentality and behavior themselves. So lead by example. Encourage giving. Encourage giving. When your children have money, encourage them to spend their money to buy birthday presents for their friends, for their uncles, for their auntie, for family members. Encourage them to be generous with their money, not just you to buying those gifts on their behalf, but encouraging them to donate their own money within their budget, of course, and with boundaries. It is so important to do that because children begin to understand that it's not always about me and my needs, that somebody else actually may need it more than I would need it. Create traditions around giving, maybe establishing a family tradition around Christmas where you can say, every Christmas as a family, we volunteer at the shelter, or we volunteer at the church, or we go to an orphanage, where you are teaching them through tradition that this is what we do as a family. These traditions can only reinforce the value of generosity. The next thing you can do is discuss values. I'm very big on values. We have to speak about values. Values are important because they guide our children and the way they make their decisions. If we don't emphasize values into our children, they will not know how to do. You need to engage in conversations about the importance of helping others and the blessing that comes from giving to others. For example, in Proverbs 11:25, it reminds us that a generous person, it says, a generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others, he himself will be refreshed. Imagine that kind of legacy, that you are a family that is refreshed all the time because you refreshed others, and you are prosperous because you have been generous with others. Isn't that such an amazing legacy to send and to give your children? It is so important, guys. I don't know how many times I'm going to mention this, but It is so important to maintain people's dignity while being generous at the same time. Don't tell everybody, your aunties and your uncle, don't post it on social media because it just erodes the person of their sense of self-worth. It's really wrong. Here's why it's wrong. Um, Preserving dignity of another person while helping them is respecting their dignity, first of all, and acknowledging their worth as the individual. And it's also saying that regardless of your circumstance, I see you, you are worthy to be seen, and you are worthy of respect. This that approach honors them as image bearers, that as children of God, and it recognizes that they are not defined by their current situation. They really are not. They might be going through a lot of things right now, but those things do not define who they are. Here's another reason why it's important to preserve people's dignity. It builds confidence in them. I have been poor, and I know when people just treat you funny after they've given you things, suddenly they feel like you owe them your life just because they paid for something. It is not all right. It's not okay, to a point where I would rather go hungry than if you give me something that you suddenly feel like I owe you my life. It's not okay. The right way of giving someone is when you build confidence in them with no strings attached. You support them. I don't know if you've ever heard of that saying that um, give a man a fish, he will always depend on you. Teach a man to fish, he will be independent of you. So instead of just giving someone something, in that sense, teach them how to do them, give them a skill. There are so many ways to be generous that you give them back their self-confidence. Number three, it reduces the stigma that when you are helping in that way, you are respecting their dignity, and for them as well, it makes them feel less than because they are poor. Because poverty is, people often associate poverty with so much shame. I know I've been there, that it it reinforces the need to say it is normal to ask for help, that it takes away the shame and the stigma of poverty. Fostering respect when helping others. When help is offered respectfully, it it opens up, and it creates a culture of mutual respect, because we don't know what tomorrow holds. I could be in the same situation and you need my help. So bringing respect into it is a positive dynamic that can lead to a stronger and more supportive communities, because when we help each other into communities with respect, it's build strong communities that each person is given respect and dignity, and removing the stigma of poverty. Imagine what strong communities we could build when people don't feel the shame to ask for help. I think that could be incredible. We could change communities as women, as Proverbs 31 women that want to live out this life so loudly and boldly, a life that honors God. Living out a generous spirit as we reflect on Proverbs 31, I want us to embrace the call to opening our hands to the poor, not just the poor on the street, but to the poor. And I don't want you to think of poor as in just material things, to the poor in spirit, poor in food, to the poor who don't have emotional support. We are all poor in something. And we can reach out to those in need and cultivate the spirit of generosity within our families, within our communities, within our church, within our friendship circles. Generosity is more than just an action. It's a reflection of God's heart. And when we involve ourselves in generosity, we get in tune with God's love and His grace for His people. And by making generosity a central part of our lives, we not only impact those around us, but also create a ripple effect that spreads kindness and compassion far beyond our immediate circle. Let us commit to living out these principles, and in doing so, we're making a meaningful contribution and difference to the world. Hi there, I'm Sandra Bizatra. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you found this video inspiring and helpful. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. Remember, every step you take towards growth and resilience is a step towards a brighter future. Keep shining, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, stay blessed and take care.